Hi everybody, it's the day after Thanksgiving. And if you were lucky enough to host dinner last night, that means you probably got a refrigerator full of leftovers. I know we do. And one of those is very likely going to be a nice turkey carcass. But what do you do with a turkey carcass? Well, if you didn't just throw it away last night, which I'm sure a lot of people did, you can make really nice stock out of the turkey carcass. And then you've got the stock for the turkey soup that you're probably going to make a little bit later on over the weekend. How do you make turkey stock? Well, let me show you. So this is my mise en place, and we've got a nice turkey carcass here. I did the turkey on the grill this year. I brined it in salt water and onion powder for about 24 hours and then put it on the grill. Probably it was on for about 2.5, maybe almost 3 hours, and then rested it for a full hour after I took it off the grill. And this was one of the moistest, most flavorful turkeys. Everybody said it's one of the best they've ever had, so I'm really pretty proud of that. But here's what's left. As I can say, it's pretty well picked over. I've got a turkey carcass, and then I've got what some people refer to as the Trinity, just celery, carrots, and onions. This is all that's going to go into our turkey stock. Maybe a little bit of extra salt, although the meat on the turkey, the carcass, is going to be pretty salty from the brining process. We'll just kind of taste that as we go and see what happens. But these are the ingredients, and as we come over here, we're going to see one of my mother's old Le Creuset Dutch ovens. This is the medium-sized one that I have. I've got a smaller one that I use for pot roast and a great big one that I actually brine the turkey in. This is the medium-sized one, and this is going to be perfect for making stock. So here we go. I've preheated the Dutch oven. I've got some extra virgin olive oil that I'm just going to put in the bottom of that. And that's going to be so we can sweat off the veg before we put in the turkey. And I'm just going to bring this over here and start throwing it in. Onions, carrots. You can tell I found some extra large carrots. We were on a cruise ship not long ago. We took a tour of the ship, and one of the things they did was take us down through the galley, and those would have been considered small carrots in the cruise ship galley. And I'll throw the celery in there. I will go ahead and put in just a little bit of kosher salt with that. As I said, the carcass is going to be pretty salty as it is because of the brining process. And now we're going to let those cook down before we add in the carcass. So my vegetables are getting pretty well just warmed up is all I'm really doing, getting those leaves of the onion all separated out and just get that process beginning, because honestly these are going to stew for a long time and I don't need to get them cooked just at this point. So one turkey carcass. And it wasn't a big turkey, it was only about a 10-pounder. So that'll make that easy to just put right down in there. 10 pounds, we only had 5 people last night, so 10 pounds was plenty big enough for the turkey. And the last thing is we're going to just start covering that up with water. And it'll probably take 2 of these pitchers to get enough water in it to cover the entire carcass. So we'll just let that refill for a minute. This Dutch oven, as I said, was Mom's, and that thing's got to be 50 years old if it's a day. It had been in our kitchen forever, and I just recall Mom using it a lot. So I'm really happy to have that. It's a little bit of a connection with kind of the cooking roots that I have. One more pitcher of that water should be enough to get everything covered in the Dutch oven. And what this does is that as this simmers, and it's going to be on the stove for at least an hour, and I may leave it on 2, it'll extract all of the remaining fat out of the turkey. It'll help what meat there is left on the carcass flake off and be in the stock. I'll strain all that out before it gets used, but all that goodness is going to be in there. Okay. So here we have one more pitcher of water. I actually have to let that go one more round to get enough water in there to cover the carcass. Let's see, maybe it's sitting up on top of the vegetables. Maybe I can get that down in the... No, I'm going to want to get one more pitcher. So here we go, one more pitcher of water. That'll get that carcass completely covered. Like that. And now with the temperature on high, of course all that water just came out of the refrigerator and it got a little chilly today, so even the water in the pipes is going to be colder than we like. I'm going to lid that up and let it come to a boil. What does they used to say? B2B RTS, bring to boil, reduce to simmer. And then we'll let that simmer on the stove for probably about 2 hours. Okay, we have reached a boil, and you want to be careful with this now because if you're using a cast iron Dutch oven like this, that little handle is going to be really hot. So I'll use that to get that off. You can see we've got a nice boil going on there. And that really, I'm going to reduce that down to kind of a medium low. Let that get down to a simmer. And then we let it sit on the stove covered for, you know, an hour, maybe 2. I'll probably let this go 2 hours. And then we'll come back and we'll strain it all off and I'll show you how we finish up the stock and store it. But for right now, I'm going to go sit down and watch the last half of the Eagles and Bears game on Black Friday football. It's been about 90 minutes. The Bears beat the Eagles, and not much more you can say about that. It was one of those football games that I like to watch because I don't really care who wins, and so as long as it's an entertaining football game, they're fun. Okay, so here we have pretty much turkey stock. The carcass is pretty much split in half. Not a lot you can say about that. So let me just give this a taste real quick and see where we are seasoning-wise. It's hot. Okay, I'm going to add a pretty generous amount of salt because it didn't get quite as salty as I thought it might. Let that dissolve. And then we'll see where we are. And when it comes right down to it, broth is going to be a little on the bland side, but it doesn't have to taste like nothing. That's better. Chances are whatever you cook with the broth, you're going to put salt in anyway, so you don't want to get it too salty. So now it's time to try and get all these bits and pieces out, get it strained, and talk about storage. Okay, so I've moved my pot of hot stock over to the sink, and the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and just take out these bits of carcass. See how that's all falling apart? All the collagen in the joints and such has broken down and gone into the stock. So we've got those two pieces that we'll just take and throw away, and obviously we're just throwing away those, the onions and the celery and the carrots as well. So all that goes in there. And I've got my largest measuring cup and a big strainer. And again, don't forget, this is a hot pot. Do not go and try and pick this up with your bare hands. And here we go. We're just going to strain. Okay, that one's full. And look how nice that looks. See if we can get right down in there like that. That's just exactly how we want that to look. And I've still got half a pot over there. So what I've done here is grab my next largest Dutch oven, because I've still got quite a bit of stuff here. And we'll start straining out some of the rest of that. That all goes right in there. And now when I pull the colander out, we have some really nice turkey stock. And actually, I am planning to make soup tomorrow, so I may just leave that right there and I'll cook my soup in the big Dutch oven. Sounds like a plan. Now let's talk about storage. Ball jar. This is a 6-cup ball jar. So let's just see how much of this will go in there. It says there are 8 cups in the measuring cup here, but let's just see how we do. Some of that's going to go in the sink regardless. Almost every bit of it. And what I'll do with that last little bit is take it out and put it in the Dutch oven in the refrigerator for when I make soup tomorrow. So there you go. I'm going to let that cool before I lid it up. And I'll be back in just a moment. So I took a couple of minutes to wash a couple of dishes and put my kitchen back together a little bit. But that is your basic way to make stock. I did it with a turkey carcass. If you've roasted a chicken and you have a chicken carcass left over, you can make chicken stock. If you do that with beef bones, maybe you've got some prime rib left over from your Christmas dinner, which I'm sure I'm going to. At least I'll have the bones. You can make beef stock. It really is just a question of simmering out all of the goodness from the bones and the carcass of whatever it is you've got, with a few aromatics and a little salt. It's really good stuff, and I hope I've given you some inspiration to make your own stock and take a little bit more control of what's going on in your kitchen. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Christmas is around the corner. Who knows what I'm going to cook and maybe try to show you a little bit of, but I'll figure it out, and I hope you'll be along for the ride. Thanks for watching.